Hi, welcome to this episode, Prophecy of the Last Hour. I do have some meat and I have some prophecy. I'm going to talk about prophecy. I'm actually very excited. I am. I'm very excited that tomorrow the city of Jerusalem will be recognized by the United States of America as the capital of Israel today. That is so highly prophetic. But it's probably, what I'm going to say is probably a whole different spin than most people are going to see. But I'm going to give my 2 cents. I just think that this is outstanding. And I give Yahweh a hand clap, for he has done what he has promised all these many ages. The 2 houses of Israel. You know, if this is one of the most fundamental understandings and truths that is being restored to the elect in this hour, in this day, in this time. If people don't understand the 2 houses of Israel, I'm not going to totally teach that today per se. I have a 14 video playlist on my YouTube channel if you want to go back and check it out at some point. And many people have unpacked this. This is foundational to understanding what is going on in our world today. But it's just astounding to me. Israel, and all right, so let's get this straight. I'm going to refer to the house. I'm going to refer to the nation over there in the Mideast, that land, that not as Israel per se, but as Judah. Right now, basically, and this is what is so fascinating about the mysteries of Elohim as we watch them play out, that really is still the house of Judah. We have the rest of the 10 tribes scattered still in diaspora around the world, the house of Israel. So Judah to me, just so you can follow me, is the land over there in Israel, the capital Jerusalem, which is being made, recognized sociopolitically today's world as their capital. And then the rest of us, as Ephraimites, who are being covenanted back into all Israel. So then Judah has paid for her sins. This is what is being manifested. Now, people, I don't care. Yahweh works his purposes. I don't care what you think of Trump or the politics. I don't care if you think that Israel, the Judah over there is just one big Zionist, Luciferian psyop. I don't care. The point is, ultimately, our Elohim is in charge and he is working out his purposes, his prophecies, his plans for all Israel. But the point is that Judah has paid for her sins. To me, that's what this really indicates. And this is so exciting for prophetic timeline because we are so close to the restoration. And in my opinion, we need to get a grasp of this thing spiritually. So we are not sucked in to Hasatan's, all his destructive plans for the nations and the chaos that he would like to bring upon the world. Before he, like a little kid, before he has to give up the land, before he has to give it back. Before the great Jubilee, the final Jubilee, where everything has to be restored to its original owner. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And it's going back to Elohim, Adonai Eloheinu. All right, Yahweh Elohim. So enough preaching. Anyways, Jerusalem, this is something we have to really understand. And I have to start here because there's 2 things that have been going on. And what I was going to say, I think Ephraim has, and I do ascribe to this concept that Ephraim paid for their sins, so to speak. And when the nation of America, so to speak, was born, 1776, and I believe this math, and I do believe in this understanding, this narrative, that marked from the time that the northern kingdom was dispersed from their land to 1776, 2,300 years, I believe. I think it's 2,600 years. Could have my math wrong. And all that time of their complete and total diaspora, they paid for their sins. And there's something called 7 times 7, pay for your sins. Part of it is 7 times 7, because part of it, the problem in this whole big picture is, we have to pay for our sins. There's no getting around it, all right? Elohim is a justice, the justice of Elohim. This is a huge principle. Can't flush out. There has to be, along with his tender mercies and loving kindness, there's the justice of Elohim that must be metered out. But the flip side of this story that's coming out is when this thing is all wrapped up, when there's this big the courtroom, drama, and everybody's actions are played back to them, including the watcher angels, including the angels over the nations, it's going to be shown that they went way beyond what Elohim told them to do in terms of meteoric justice, chastening the nations and peoples in Israel when they did not obey Yahweh. They went way overboard. And that's what the 7 times 7, that our sins were paid for doubly. All right. So there's 2 sides to this coin. And when you understand Judah, their exile, their dispersion, the diaspora they're under, the exile, and it's astounding that anybody could have endured such a harsh judgment. The 9th is not coming from the hand of Elohim per se. It is coming from these fallen watcher angels, and this is the last class of me, and that they are going to get thrown down soon and very soon. So let's just start with unpacking, because the biggest principle in this whole thing that I think a mature elect individual needs to have to even begin to grasp what's going on, in my opinion. Let me screen share something here. Let's just go to this verse, very famous verse, Galatians 4:22. Paul is saying that we know this, Abraham had 2 sons. And he goes on, one by the bondwoman and one by the free woman. But the son of the bondwoman was born according to the flesh, but the son of the free woman through promise. This is allegorically speaking, big clue. It's allegory, people. Speaking for these women are 2 covenants, one proceeding from Mount Sinai, bearing children who are to be slaves. She is Hagar. Now, this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to the present Jerusalem. For she is in slavery with her children, but the Jerusalem above is free. She is the mother of us all. See, what this is really, and I know there's all these crazy teachings today, that Paul is totally distorting what Paul is saying here. He's not dishing the Torah law. What he is saying here, and this is we are sold into slavery because of the sin of Adam. The flesh nature, our carnal nature, rules supreme. The covenants, what this is representing is the fact that the Jerusalem that above is free. She is our mother. The Ruach HaKodesh that we are born of again, no one's putting her, let me put it this, she is still ruling and reigning above in the high heavens, free. All right. This is our birthright. This is what, if you're born again, you are born of the Father who resides in the high heavens. All right. And it's allegorized with, there's so much in here. There is the whole concept of the female personification, Elohim, why female imagery and allegory is used. Jerusalem above is free. She is our mother. But the flip side, this bondwoman he's talking about is our carnal nature. So first of all, this has nothing to do, seriously, with, saying that Torah, the Torah is in bond, is making us in bondage. This is an allegory things for the 2 natures of man. We have a spiritual nature and we have a carnal nature, and our carnal nature, unfortunately, since the fall, has ruled us. Unless you become born again of the Jerusalem that is above, unless you can receive this spiritual inheritance, the spiritual higher nature, you are in bondage. You are in slavery. That's the whole principle, and that's so fundamental to understand. It's really, and what has happened in these last 2,000 years since Judah went into exile, and since the rise of, quote unquote, the house of Israel through this, I don't know what the word is, through this quote unquote religion they call Christianity, which is nothing more than the fulfillment of prophecies to the lost tribes, all right, or the lost sheep. There has always been a hardening of heart and a partial blindness on both houses. So part of the problem is it's been very hard. Very, very few people have really understood through the ages the depth of this, that what has really been going on, that there have had to be 2 days, as Hosea says, where Yahweh was going to, he's made his promises to the nations, to the Gentiles, and to the lost sheep, that he was going to go get them. And during those 2 days, unfortunately, Judah went into exile for her own issues, her own sins. And so there has been this tandem prophetic track going on. But now we are definitely entering a new age. We are definitely wrapping up some of these prophecies. And the restoration of all Israel is truly on the horizon. It's very exciting. But with this hardening of heart and partial blindness, you've also had this concept of brother against brother. It's been insane how the two houses have been fighting each other, destroying and killing each other, not realizing that they are brothers. So let me just say, Paul talks about in Romans 12, how all Israel will be saved. All Israel is a code word. It means the concept of all 12 tribes and all the proselytes, anyone who wants to join this. Look at it like this is the body of Christ. This, when I say all Israel, this is the new Jerusalem. This is the new heaven and the new earth. This is the new reality that he has been creating and putting souls into it since Adam. This thing's been going on since Adam. Souls have been being added and out of every generation into this quote unquote the body of Christ. Well, that's probably the most latest verbiage that is being used prophetically. But Paul says, I do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, of this mystery. See, this is what's called a mystery. It isn't that Elohim is never going to let you in on it or tell you. It just takes very deep understanding to figure out what's going on. So it says it's a mystery, brothers, because on the surface, how would anybody, most Christians today still do not know. This is the point. And most Jews don't. See, I'm telling you, both houses, they're still in this partial blindness and this hardness of heart towards each other. All right? Because we have not understood what's going on. But that, and he's saying that you would not be conceited, that Israel has experienced a hardening of heart. Now, see, he's really talking about Judah. Judah has experienced this hardening of heart in part until the full number of the Gentiles has come in. And so, and at the end, all Israel will be saved. So for God, because this is just a prophetic season we've been in. It's pretty much wrapped up. All of the nations now have heard this gospel, quote unquote, this good news that this Yeshua HaMashiach, this Messiah ben Joseph has come. He has opened up a door of repentance for all the lost in the world, Gentile, Jew, and Christian. All right. Did I say that right? Or Paul called Jew, Gentile, and the Christians. But, when it's all wrapped up, this is going to give Elohim such glory. It says that when he restores all Israel in front of the nations, it will give him more glory than anything he has ever done. It's going to make the deliverance out of Egypt look like, child's play. It says, oh, the depth and the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of Elohim. Wisdom and knowledge are the highest levels of understanding in the whole concept of God. All right, this is something you have to understand. How unsearchable his judgments and his past beyond tracing out. Who has known the mind of the Lord? Who has been his counselor? Who was ever given to Elohim, and from Elohim that he should repay him. For from him, through him, to him are all things. To him be the glory forever and ever. And amen. When it is shown to the nations, to everybody who's left, who didn't want to be part of all Israel, what this was all about, it is going to be absolutely astounding. So I say, the boat's getting ready to leave, and so it's time. But just in hindsight, because the best way to understand anything, this is just the nature of the way it is in hindsight. But one of the things we have to understand, is and this is what code words. See, the Judah, who is our older brother, okay, and this is the whole parable, it's the older brother. They never left, Judah, as the older brother, never left the covenant. They've always been in covenant relationship. And when I'm talking this, also know people, I'm just talking about the true real. I'm not saying that everybody who calls himself a Christian, everybody who calls himself is saved. No, we all know that's not how it works. It's an inner working. This is the next thing we have to understand. These code words that are used in a lot of the readings, and it talks about the Edom and the Edomites, Kittim, the enemies of Israel. This is where the biggest problem that has always plagued Bible scholarship and Bible teaching is that the keys to the kingdom of most generations are lost, all right? So most people understand things just according to a lower carnal understanding. So, you know, Jerusalem, about it just referring to the city of Jerusalem, not understanding that this is a code word. Jerusalem is a code word, is a concept for the new heaven and the new earth that Elohim is been creating, making. It's pretty much wrapped up at this point. Edom and the Edomites in the Dead Sea Scrolls and at the time of the destruction of the Second Temple, the word used was the Kittim. This talks about people who, these were always code words, and it says even in the belly of Rachel. I always get Rachel and Rebecca mixed up, whichever had Isaac and Ishmael, or Esau. It comes from Esau and Jacob. Esau, you get Esau from the you get Edomite from Esau. He's the father of Edomites. It's not talking about the race of people over there, all right, called the Edomites and a lot of the Muslim nations, whatever. It's talking about a kind of person who just absolutely refuses to see the spiritual realities and dimensions of life and live according to them. It is somebody who is completely carnally wrapped up in this world and is going to use every circumstance and situation to get what they can to feed their flesh, be it intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, physically, whatever. All right. These are, and you know, you cannot serve two masters. You're either going to figure it out that there is a high Elohim and give your allegiance to him, or you're going to just serve the God of this world and all of his carnality. And so these are why, because a lot of times in Jewish writing, in the Talmud and the Mishnah, it talks about the Edomites, but it's really a code word for Christianity. It's a code word for Islam, for the Romans, the people who come against the people of God in actual real physicality. But usually behind them, see, we're all manipulated by leaders and elders, people who twist the emotions and rile up people and get their carnal nature stirred to, you know, what is war except you're stirred up in your carnal nature to literally go against your brother or another human being in a way. Now, there's so much into all this. I don't want to get too bogged down, but Israel, the Edomites, it really does seem to be that Christianity has really been a thorn in the side of Judah for 2,000 years. Now, this is all prophetic, but this is something we really need to understand as this concept of brother against brother. It's only been in the last 50, 60, 70 that Christianity is beginning to understand and really begin to grasp our close affinity. Oh my goodness, like to our brother Judah, to the house of Judah, not only for scribal writings. I mean, Judah still is the go-to source for anything you want to know about the Old Testament and even understanding the New Testament. These people were not Christians at the turn, you know, she wasn't a Christian. Oh, all right. Well, I should do this. That made me think of something. I'm going to have to stop here, put my teaching on pause and say something. I have actually started a blog. I'm very excited. I have a new website, which I'll put in the link. And if you want to tune into this, I'm going to start to write down some of my, understandings, and they could be used for teaching aids or just, for people to print out. It's just another way to try to assimilate or understand some of the things I say, whatever. But I'll put it in the link, but I am going to do this, and I've written 2 blogs so far, and I am going to commit this all down. So anyways, that was just a little, we'll close that window and come back to this. All of Israel has to come in through faith. This includes any Jew or any Gentile or any quote unquote someone born into this a Christian home or background or whatever. This is what it means that Abraham by faith. All right. It doesn't mean that that's the whole end of the story, that you don't have to, be holy or, live Torah or obey quote unquote the 10 commandments. I mean, this is part of the disconnect. But let me give you some, let me start by trying to paint a picture of the diaspora. well, let me just finish this thought, because in all of this, Jerusalem, because I don't know how the world is going to react. That's not what I'm not talking prophecy like to Jerusalem being made the capital, recognized as the capital of Jerusalem. This, what it is showing me that the stage is being set. The restoration, some of the components, even in the natural world, are being put in place. Because the fact that Jerusalem is going to become the center again, in a cup of trembling for the nations, there's many things that this is going to do on many levels. But to the true elect, so we don't get drawn in to all the probably, I want to say, gross carnality and flash pan reactions, which could be absolute war among the nations over this. So we have to keep our minds elevated and understand the higher spiritual realities that are going on. But when the two nations were split, or actually not even, way before that, actually, it was prophesied. See, so prophecy sometimes takes hundreds and hundreds of years to play itself out. When Jacob prophesied over his 12 sons and gave them sort of each a kind of glimmer of their future, and he divided very specifically through promptings of the Ruach. This was definitely Elohim's plan. He divided the birthright. This is and the spiritual blessings, which had three components. All right, it had the blessing, the priesthood, and the ruling authority. They were divided between Ephraim and Judah. All right, now Ephraim has become a code word for all of the 10 tribes. So in other words, he saw down the road these two nations that were going to be divided. One was going to be totally scattered, Ephraim, and just like seed sown among the Gentiles, and they were going to become Gentiles. All right, and Judah, who was going to basically be the older brother and stay in the house, and sometimes, hang on by a thread, sometimes really flourish, like under David and Solomon and some of the other times. But it's very important to say that this was the priesthood and the blessing and the ruling authority were divided between the two. All right. So the part that we have to play, so to speak, the Ephraimites, is we receive what was called the blessing. In other words, wherever we went, we brought an inherent favor or blessing to the nations in which we went. And if we lived Torah, and if we, by our conscience, whether we just did what was right, did what was good, lived the Noahide laws, elevated society, we were a catalyst for bringing blessing to these nations that was above, if you've been tracking with me, because I can't, the mazal of the access that the mazal of the gods over those nations had. I can't go in. I hope you're tracking with me and you can understand what I just said. The flip side is the same thing was for Judah. Wherever they went and were exiled, because of their obedience to Torah and their continued faith in their promises and in their Elohim, it brought an inherent blessing to the people groups they were in that was above the mazal of the gods of those nations. All right, that's very important to understand. Now, the fact that it is an American president, so to speak. Like I said, Trump, I don't care what you think about him. The point is, it is this Ephraimite nation. All right, I'm going to paint it because I totally believe, oh my gosh, it's so funny. America is not Babylon. All right, prophetically, Babylon is a code word. It's just a code word at this point for all the demonic forces, all right, that are out there, that the mazal of demonic forces, elements, angels, whatever, principalities and powers that rule, that can rule and do rule, and history shows us they rule in every generation throughout all the lands of the world. All right. So Babylon is a code word for like the demonic upper hand, the demonic manifestation, the negative energies that will dominate a populace that is carnal and rules according to the lower nature, and with all of its, it gets, and I've been talking this about lust, this whole thing, the lewdness, the carnality. the things that get practiced in these categories, the magic arts, the murders, the thefts, the lyings, the deceits, the list just goes on and on, all right? Versus the mazal that comes from the Father to those who, which is called, from the Jerusalem from above. All right. So the righteous that are in a nation exalt a nation. That's what it says. The wicked in a nation demoralize and bring down a nation. All right. And hey, it's our choice. And this is in America today. Yeah, we got a real problem because the tares are kind of running the show. This is the whole point. Our nation has rapidly degenerated in the last 30, 40 years, mainly because we tolerate and we allow demonic influences over us, from be it Hollywood, be it the government, be it, whatever, our Torahless lifestyle. All right. So what's important to understand is that the fact that this Ephraimite nation that we have, which I believe we do represent, the two houses, because I want to show you this, there's a very important principle called, here, I have some notes here. Another place. We represent, I believe, the prophetic fulfillment that Samuel, the prophet Samuel, gave to David in 2 Samuel 7:10. Let's just even go there. One more screen share here. Let's see. My other verse here. In 2 Samuel 7:10, he talks about, and I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, so that they may dwell in their own place and be disturbed no more. And violent men shall afflict them no more as formerly. The thing that's interesting to understand about this in contextual understanding, this is Samuel talking to David when the people were already at peace in their own land, quote unquote, technically Israel. All right, so why would he say, I will appoint a place? This word place, used twice, a place or own place, is actually in its Hebrew, when you look it out, it has 3 meanings. It can mean underneath, below, or instead of. So here's a prophecy saying that Yahweh was going to plant Israel in another place where they would be disturbed no more. And this is, I've done teachings on this in my 14 video series. This is so important because that's why people don't understand what America represents. We are another place, all right? Outside, because for many before Israel, before 70 years ago, when Judah did receive back access to their homeland, and we started to see an ingathering coming back to this quote unquote physical land. But remember, our ingathering, seriously, people, in the higher, really is nothing to do with this earth. This earth is going to get thoroughly torched by fire and cleansed in the sense. Our spiritual earth, all right, what we're going to inherit, the new body that Yeshua had where you walk through walls, this type of a land, eretz, body, all these words are working together to paint this picture. There will be oh dear, I didn't want to get into all this. All right, I'm just going to go back to my other place. It is the word 8478, used, the Strong's word, but it's used very clearly to say this context of what I'm saying, like in Genesis 4:25, where Eve was told that she was going to get another child instead of Abel. See, this is what's really important. It's used again, this word another place, another thing, another, in Genesis 22:13, where Abraham, at the sacrifice of Isaac, he's told, no, I've got another sacrifice. You really, at the very end, he says, okay, you don't have to sacrifice your son. I have another plan. I have another. It is the lamb that was in the thickets. All right. So there was another. There actually was a sacrifice provided, and that was the ram that was in the thickets, and he didn't sacrifice Isaac. So this concept, another. So fast forward, America, we are a nation that has more, and that is founded fundamentally and principally by the dispersed 2 houses of Judah and Israel. And I totally described it like Christopher Columbus. It happened at the exact same time of the expulsion from Spain of the Jews. I totally believe many Jews came over to this nation incognito, so to speak, because they were at a heightened, there was a huge heightened dispersion, exile, expulsion going on from many of the nations in Europe, Spain in particular. And then you have the northern, the Mayflower Compact, kind of establishing this nation, this whole thing, by many Ephraimite tribes from the northern lands of, France and France, and I'm trying to get my geography from my brain, slow down. England, Scotland, Wales, these places where we know geographically. And at the same time, from Ethiopia, I know, I'm sorry, the Black Christians who want to just, they've been coming back, you've been coming back, how he did it was crazy. I mean, I can't totally defend everything, but it's a reality how so many people, so many Asian nation people coming back to this place, dispersed, exiled, house of seed of the tribes is coming back to this nation and has historically been coming back. This has all been going on. Basically, we've been clueless because he always said he would bless the seed of the righteous because of the righteousness of the generation. So if you're righteous in your generation, let me just say, if you lived 1,000 years ago, because believe me, I want this thing to wrap up. If you, and you were righteous, it was guaranteed to you that he was going to bless your seed, your children, your offspring down the road because of your right. So every generation, this is such a beautiful thing. We are actually generating blessings if we would just live for all the future generations. And America represents this other place. I do believe, see, I'm not saying we're not going to come under judgment. I'm not saying we haven't come under chastisement. We've got to get rid of these tears. We have to understand, and this is going to be happening, I believe, that as we see this thing unfold, and if people can grasp this understanding, we're going to understand we are two sides of the same coin. Judah over there, America over here, and the nations that join with us. I'm not saying people, Judah's been perfect in the way they've reclaimed the land. That's not what's at stake here, because God will meter out justice. So, if you harm your neighbor, it's going to harm your neighbor. It's going to come back to you in some way, shape, or form. That's a whole different level of understanding. I'm just talking about prophetically how these things are coming to pass. And we are going to begin to see ourselves as the one people of Elohim that worship the same Elohim. All right. Now, Jeremiah 3:17, to kind of wrap up this last piece here. It says that at that time, they will call Jerusalem the throne of the Lord, and all the nations will be gathered to it, to Jerusalem, for the name of the Lord, nor will they walk anymore after the stubbornness of their evil heart. In those days, the house of Judah will walk with the house of Israel, and they will come together from the land of the north to the land that I gave your fathers as an inheritance. Then I said, how I would set you among my sons and give you a pleasant land, the most beautiful inheritance of the nations. And I said, you shall call me my father and not turn away from following me. Now let me just unpack a couple of code words. It's encrypted, people. We have to have these keys to the land of the north. And this is a perfect example. The land of the north, biblically, as is the way these sages put, they're not talking about Russia. This is not, see what people understand, and this is my thing, because I walk in the understanding the dimensions, the levels in which this thing is being played out. This earth plane of physicality is not the only reality that is absolutely going on and playing into and interacting with and making everything happen. All right. The land of the north is a code word, especially in Jewish mysticism, for the demonic realm. All right. If there's a geographic place, and it's actually, I've said this before, you can, on the tree of life, I can tell you exactly where it is, Gevera. It's this concept of harsh judgment of this is the demonic realm. Because let me tell you, what happens is we will get chastened for our sins. It's a fact. That's what the text tell us this over and over. All right. And he uses his chastening angels. Then he will create situations for us where it's the karma. You reap what you sow. So if you steal, something's going to be taken from you. I've done YouTube. There's nothing free in life in the sense, except the new birth. It's really the freest thing we can have. You will pay for it. It will come back to you in some way, shape, or form, and you will have to endure what you did. And this is how we learn and understand, oh, wow, why did I do that stupid thing? Because look at the suffering. I mean, I get it now. And we repent. All right. This is all a process. This is all built into the system. But the land of the north is the demonic land. So he says when he brings us back from the land of the north, he is talking about, he is rescuing us from this land of carnality, this fallen state and nature and kingdom of Hasatan. Which, if anybody didn't believe that, Hasatan is the king of the demonic realms, okay? I mean, that's Bible 101, all right? So the point is, on a higher level, we are all being rescued, because I said Jerusalem that is above is where is our quote unquote, this is the point, capital city, so to speak. It's a code word for the fact that we are coming into a land. And this is why all these new concepts have to be taught, because when you understand heaven and earth, heavens represents the spiritual essence, the soul, these realities that you can't see. All right, but we have soul, like there is spirit, Elohim is spirit. These things exist. These are not figments of our imagination, all right? They have true essence. Actually, they have a corporality. It's just a different kind of corporality that our physical eyes are not wired to see, all right? So, but there's coming a day, and we're in this day. We are in this day. We have been in this day prophetically for about 70 years. I'd say really, and ramping it up in the last 30 years. With the house of Israel and the house of Judah are starting to walk together. And we are coming from the land of the north, from demonic captivity, and into a land that he gave our fathers as an inheritance. The land, it's not this physical land. It is the land that he is creating, the place that he has been creating in the new heaven and the new earth. Earth has to be redeemed, rectified. It has to be fixed, because if anybody look around, it's got tons of viruses. At this point, the land is expiring, the species are dying, the weather's out of control, whatever, earthquakes are up, whatever, I don't know, are factors into this thing, that this land, he says he's going to roll up like a scroll, this present heaven and earth, and he's going to, manifest what is the whole new the whole new heaven and earth that he has been working on. So this is a point, as we understand this, but back to my original point, the fact that it is this Ephraimite nation, which has houses, basically the two houses, house of Judah, because there's more Jews actually, and I think it just tipped this in the last 10 years, more Jews living in America than there are in Israel and in the rest of the world combined, all right? And the house of Israel, there are more Christians, so to speak. That's why we are a Christian. We were the foremost Christian nation. When we're at the top of our game, we're not quite at the top of our game today, but we're getting back to it. Revival, you can hear it. It's coming. People are waking up to all this. As we rise in understanding, because I'll tell you, with brightness shines, the brightness of the day is as true spiritual understanding and revelation becomes lodged in a collective group of people, it just changes all of the dynamics. Darkness, spiritual darkness flees. And if spiritual darkness flees, that means darkness, quote unquote, that the captivity of the land is released. So there's so much tied into this, but we are living in a time where the house of Judah and the house of Israel will come together from the land of the north that I gave your fathers as an inheritance. And we are coming into this concept that we really are two sides of the same coin, house of Judah, house of Israel. But the fact, again, that Trump is doing this at this time is, to me, setting up the scenario. Because when Yeshua, and I do believe in a physical return of Yeshua as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I absolutely believe that Yeshua, while he has never left us, he's always been with us since, the resurrection per se. He said, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. He works in other realms. He's doing, and he has manifested himself to many people. Anyone who is of the new birth has come into this understanding. But what's so interesting is that here we have a nation today that has the authority, the visibility, the will, the leadership to do this. This scenario has never existed before. I mean, we've had presidents since 1948 who could have done it, but did not do it. To recognize the capital of Jerusalem as the spiritual capital, whether it's physical or not, but of this people of Judah, who is actually all of us, of all Israel. So this prophetic phenomena to me is fascinating, and how it plays out is going to be really interesting. And it's going to be played out on two levels. The elect are going to get it. We're going to rise above all the circumstances that it's going to create, and we are going to be a healing and a voice of truth in the chaos. People who want to get all bent out of shape about whatever. There are tons of people on this planet. There's probably more with lower level natures who just see things, through the carnal eyes and how it's going to affect them. And Ishmael has never forgiven, quote unquote, Jacob for stealing, quote unquote, stealing the birthright, when that is not at all really when you understand what happened. Because just let me lay this out to you, because see really what's going on. I mean, it says that, the serpent was more cagey is the word, more subtle, I think is the word, but it means he was more crafty, wily. He just knew how to really, sneakily around and get his way, so to speak. But I'll tell you, Elohim can beat him at his game any day of the week. There is and the fact that you had the serpent steal the birthright, or Adam's birthright, so to speak, from him through Eve and him sitting, right? So then the demonic realms were able to rise above and become the gods of this world, right? That's what happened. But the fact so cagely, how Elohim has been able to take back that birthright. And this is what's going to be really interesting. And it started with Jacob in this is what he's saying, crafty, wily way, was able to get back that birthright. Because I said, you're going to reap what you sow. Don't care who you are. The serpent, it was stolen from Adam. Well, in a very crafty way, Jacob was used in a way, in allegorical, to get back what was the inheritance to the sons of Adam, this birthright. And again, now, when Yeshua came, all right, if Satan had understood, he never would have crucified the Lord of glory. This is that Yeshua came in totally as a flesh man and was able to die and to fulfill prophetic promises that would elevate him above all the gods of the nation, so that he would get the name that was above every other name. People, oh my gosh, it's unbelievable how Elohim does these things. And we're at this last one now, how Jerusalem is going to become the city, and he's going to use that concept, that physical, to just elevate people right out of, just right into the stratosphere with understanding as this comes into reality. So I just want to end, I think I made a lot of my points. I want to end on one thing, because I do think it's very important at this time to really understand what the exile of Judah has been like. I mean, I actually grow daily in my love for my old Judah. I mean, what they have endured, oh my gosh, they have paid for their sins. I just believe that we're going to just be so happy for them as we see their rewards, at the end of the age, when everyone receives, because they have endured through unbelievable persecutions, mental, physical, spiritual. It's unbelievable. But it says here that the nation would succeed. Judah had to endure. See, this is another piece of it's prophetic. Judah had to, the house of Judah had to endure. So important. So they could be a light. They could still be a scribal house and a light to lead Ephraim home. This is part of the plan. All right. Whether they knew it or not, we were seeing this now. The Gentiles, they would succeed in their desire to bring the Gentiles under the wings of the divine presence. By its knowledge and wisdom, by what Judah has kept for us in terms of the writings, it will remove from us all of our false beliefs. This is what's going on to anyone who is involved in this, like back home, this Hebrew roots movement, going back, understanding our Essene origins of this. This is so unbelievable. And the fact that Judah will act, in the end, will act kindly towards its tormentors and will instruct its tormentors. The true remnant of Judah has always been, and this has been proven through the ages, and this is another whole teaching, how the sages of Israel have so gently and reverentially and quiet instructed the nations and even Christianity so many times, time after time. This is all on the good side. The spirit of Jacob has been saved out of the tragedy of the exile because of the feeling of exile. No other nation, this is the one thing, no other people group on the planet who has experienced exile. It's not like they're the only ones, they're just four of the groups, but no other nation has become so different and so allegorized, and so their story is the total archetype of exile of any other nation in the world. Through its experience of suffering, humiliation, and detachment from the rest of society for generation after generation, their remnant has been truly refined in the fire. Now, one of the things that, and this is where, this whole concept of growing in wisdom and understanding, of the light of understanding getting brighter and brighter, it's been happening by people who can really have been tracking and following that. And one of the things is that in around, in 1492, I'll tell you, when the exile happened, I mentioned this, the expulsion from Spain and Portugal and Sicily in 1492. So when did Columbus, quote unquote, discover America? That was what a fake discovery. Talk about, what do they call it? A false flag, whatever. He didn't discover America. They always knew it was here. In 1492, this exile was presented itself from the viewpoint of the mystics, all right, there became an understanding, truly, they were beginning to break through on their radar, so to speak, that it was a struggle was taking place between light and darkness. This really was a cosmic drama. See, because for hundreds of years, Judah originally just had to wrap their mind around it and cope with it and figure out a way to survive and retain an identity among the nations. Because let me just say this, it's very important for people to understand something. Ephraim was prophesied was going to go into the nations and become the nations. That was their destiny. And so when Yeshua came and he called us out of the nations, all right? But that was not the way the diaspora was going to work for the Jews. The Jews were going to go into the nations, but they had to retain their identity, all right? This is two sides of the same coin. It's a brilliant strategy of element. That they were, despite a world situation in which Israel, the nation, was delivered into the hands of the children of darkness time after time after time. All right? This is a very subtle, nuanced difference, but it really needs to be grasped to understand. And the fact that Judah has retained and did retain its identity through thick and through thin, whatever, through all its morphed personas in every generation and time, is nothing short of cosmic, of divine. They couldn't have done it. This has to be a divine thing. This is when people really look at it. The spiritual struggle to explain and to justify the exile, especially, oh my gosh, when it became intensified for the time after the 4th century, when Judah had to not only contend with all these things, but now Christianity had become, sort of like a whole separate, morphed entity that in the minds of the world, in the minds of many, in the mind of Christianity itself, that false doctrine of replacement theology, that they had replaced Judah or Israel, all right, all of these things combine to just continue to do a number on their head, so to speak. And this is why I absolutely believe, and this is the point where people talk about, you want to get mad at quote rabbinic Judaism or all these rabbinic sages, and how dare they had every right and a prophetic destiny to make a fence around Torah, to figure out how, the whole time I've been wanting to cry, because it's just, sometimes we just don't understand what's going on, and we just get so mean. Praise Elohim that he is, first of all, merciful to all of us, but that they had a right to put around fence the door and how to figure out how they were going to retain their national identity. Fine, let the Christians do and think what they want, develop all these crazy theories and theologies, which if you're into it today, you're come out of her, my people. Left, right. So the fact that happened, and then the process of this Jewish dispersion, as it went from, this is the point, from dispersion into what the Hebrew term is galut, exile. See, the feeling of exile does not always necessarily accompany the feeling of exile, does not necessarily accompany the actual reality of exile. A lot of people don't mind, if you migrate, if you're exiled, are exposed, you can have a voluntary exile. A lot of the Irish who came to this nation, even in many of them against their will, enforced indentured slavery, which is the fact of what it was, didn't view it the same. They had a longing for their homeland, but it was nothing compared to the profound inner catharsis of the Jews as they were expelled time and time again from nations. All right. So we just have to understand, I feel you have to walk in somebody else's shoes. We need to really, especially at this time, begin to walk in the shoes of Judah for a while and begin to see the exile from their point of view. All right. That's, they always say that is the number one route to healing. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. See it from their eyes. Feel it from their POV. So anyways, what I want to say is it progressed truly because they've always been in diaspora. But when the temple was destroyed, the second temple destroyed, because they've always sort of been in diaspora. This was so monumental. They had to reinvent themselves, so to speak. What did they have now? What did they have left? They had no temple. They had no priesthood. What did they have? They had Torah. What do we have when it's all wrapped up? We have Torah. We have the word. And to us as a Christian, we understand the word was made flesh because he was. For us, he had to do this. For Judah, it was different. They never left. All right. They never broke that covenant in a sense. They were never divorced. So I guess the other thing is we were divorced and sent out to the nations. Go out, become a Gentile. What do I care? But Judah was never divorced. All right. They were chastised, but they were never divorced. So the history to the Jewish people of this has powerfully colored the emotions of themselves individually as well as national consciousness. The sense of exile was expressed by the feeling of alienation in the countries of diaspora and the yearning for the national and political past and the persistent questioning of the causes and the meanings and the purposes of this exile. I mean, I don't even fully understand. I don't think anybody really fully understands. All things will be made known at the time. But what is important to understand here is that the process of the Jewish dispersion into the various countries during different periods was due to a combination of national catastrophes, military defeats, destructions, persecutions, expulsions, pogroms, and outright genocide, as history will tell us in many ways in many places. Let's just give a quick quote here of so that's what I'm saying. Anti-Semitism, it's just got to end. And to go on this journey, here I'm going to give you, I'm going to screen share one last thing. And while I do this, let me show you this. This is something someone put online. It is a timeline of the major pogroms, exiles, dispersions, genocides against the Jewish people. And typical attitude. This is a quote from this guy, Godfrey of Bouillon, in the first, one of the generals or one of the leaders of the First Crusade. To go on this crusade journey, it's one of the pogroms that happened to them. After avenging the blood of the crucified one by shedding Jewish blood and completely eradicating any trace of those bearing the name Jew, thus assuaging his own burning wrath. This is how crazy people can get when you don't really have the true picture. This idea over and over and over again, and this is what I'm saying, we have to get on top of our adversary who poisons the minds of people, and understanding that one of the major arguments that was used to get people riled up to the point of creating horrendous crimes against basically just a people group, all right, was the fact that they would say that the Jews, that the expulsion of the Jews in the Christian argument, that the exile is proof of the Jews' responsibility for the sin of the crucifixion and their punishment for doing so. And that the only thing that they can do to end their exile could be to be ended by their conversion to Christianity. Now that is the lie of the pit of hell that has to be finally stamped out under our feet. All right? As we come together into, I'll tell you who crucified the Lord of Glory. And it was and this is where, to our nation, we have to be careful. They allowed themselves to become a wasteland in the final generation of the Jewish times. They had so become a quote unquote wasteland. That's an allegorical understanding. They were just like a dearth, a desert of true Torah spirituality, and because they had let these leaders come into them and rule them, these Hasmonean and Idumean leadership, who were truly in league together with Satan, with the forces from the north, these demonic hordes, for that specific purpose, to thwart the prophecies of Elohim from coming to pass. All right, this is what is so important to understand. The Idumeans, people who study this out, this is a whole Canaanite camp spin-off. This is a branch of the tree of the seed of Cain. All right, the Hasmoneans were a usurped priesthood. They had no business being in power. The Sadducees at the time. This had happened to the nations. All right. So that these people were in control, and Hasatan was able just totally, boom, to use them to crucify the Lord of Glory. Don't think any of it took Yeshua of Elohim by surprise, but there's so much we just don't understand, and it's not taught to people. But anyways, let's just go through this thing, because I want people to see here. Okay, so we know that there was the Babylonian exile. There was in 38 BC in Alexandria, and in Egypt, a mob attacks, Egypt expulsions. But this is in the Roman Empire. At 70, you had Jerusalem expulsion following revolt. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of Jews died in the destruction of the Second Temple. Thousands and thousands and thousands were literally taken as slaves and sold to the nations, taken to Rome. How quickly do you think within 2 generations these people lost their identity? This is why Messiah ben Joseph came back for such a huge, huge group of people on the planet. But look at these dates: 250, 224, 325, 351, 357, 379. It just, in every generation, it just keeps. Italy forced conversion, Jerusalem expulsion renewed by Constantine, Persia book burning, Italy property confiscation, Milan synagogue burning, Alexandria expulsion, Babylon Judean expulsion, another Babylon Judean expulsion. These people have been dogged from every place they've gone for all of these many hundreds of years, 2,000 years. So you have the Dark Ages. In 506, 519, 554, 561, 582, you have all these expulsions, forced conversions, burnings, pogroms, genocides. You have 612, 624, 628, 699, 633. I mean, there's a lot in the 600s. Toledo forced conversion. Toledo stake burnings. Visigoth Empire explosion. Toledo, and I mean, Spain forced conversion. It didn't happen once, it happened many times in Spain. See, they had the Gentile nations, or let me say what they call these, the Edomites, had many tactics. If it wasn't, they would steal, they would go into whole cities and they would just destroy them, and they would steal all the property and money. All right. They would force conversions. All right. They would just literally expel them from their nation, as like Spain did in 1492. They would make life so unbearable, make them literally live at the level of slaves and servitude. I mean, I don't think people have, this is what we have to feel this, people. You have to feel what it was like to go through this and not to have so many components of your identity, your temple, your priesthood. And your sages had to figure out why this was going on. And yet there was always a remnant that stayed faithful. I mean, I would like to see any of us be put through this fire and retain our faith. See, this is the point. Everyone goes through the fire, but theirs was, I think, land. Here's another land conversation. Venice, ban on sea travel. All right, now we're into the early Middle Ages. We've got the Orleans Massacre. We've got a Rome and Rouen and Limoges massacre. We've got a Germany expulsion. We've got Rome Jews burned alive still in 1021. There's a Spain massacre, a Lorraine massacre, a Hungary massacre. I mean, look, then we start on the pogroms. Again, in 1099, Jerusalem Jews burned alive. We just have to really let this sink in. Germany massacres, see, a lot of times, let me just say this again, us Ephraimite and Jews living together in this other place called America, we've never really had to on our own turf. This is what he said, endure these things, all right? He did give us another land. America is so, we got oceans on both sides of us. We've got basically friendly neighbors, to the north of us and the south of us. We're pretty well isolated here, except for, dropping a nuclear bomb or an invasion bomb. I mean, it's just, I don't think it's really going to happen to the extent that has ever really happened in so many other places. But look at 1188, London and York mob attacks, England property confiscation, France expulsion, property confiscation, Blois stakes burnings. Let's go in, we're in 1215. Look at all the 1200s. Look at all these 1200s. Let's go to the top of the page, 1209, all the way down. Still, a whole page of them. London mob attacks, Canterbury mob attacks, England public hangings, Oxford mob attacks. This list was put together, I will tell you, but it's been and sent anonymously to, I guess, a newspaper what published it. To the day, they don't really know who put this list together, but it has been researched and documented to be 100% accurate. So look at this, in the last one, 1298, in Franconia, Bavaria, and Austria, 100,000 Jews slaughtered under the command of German knight Rindfleisch. He wanted his pound of flesh, I guess. The later Middle Ages, we're into 1300s. France expulsion by Philip the Fair. Same king who burned the Templars. Oh, there's so much intrigue that goes on through all this. But anyways, France and Spain, Jews burned alive. Switzerland expulsion. Worms, Strasbourg, Oppenheim, all these places, Jews burned alive. Saxony expulsion. Toledo, 8,000 Jews slaughtered. Paris mob attack. Nordlinger mass attack. Castile, Toledo, Madrid, Seville, these are all Spanish places, conversions, forced conversions and mass murders. Germany expulsion, France expulsion. Oh, just look at this, list goes on and on. Netherlands expulsion, Toledo public torture and burnings. Venice Jews burned alive. Toledo stake burnings. See, Judah has paid for her sins many times over. And I believe me, I can't wait for those watcher angels to be thrown into the lake of fire and to get justice done on this thing, because the spiritual, we just have to get on top of the fact that these armies from the north, these spiritual entities that are just at war with Elohim, and they use us as pawns. We have got to get on top of this thing. The worms expulsion. So it's going on and on. The modern age, Russia expulsion, Little Russia expulsion, Hungary banned for the third time by Queen Maria III. So the satanic, really anti-Semitic. What else would you say? Here's her quote. Henceforth, no Jew, no matter under what name, will be allowed to remain here without my written permission. I know of no other troublesome pest within the state than this race, which impoverishes the people by their fraud, usury, and money lending, and commits all deeds which an honorable man despises. Subsequently, they have to be removed and excluded from here as much as possible. I'll tell you what, that is always the lie. Now, I'm not saying there aren't some Jews that give it over to usury, go and beyond. There is, in Torah, if you said it, it's very clear. There is usury after a certain amount, they cap it, is forbidden by the Talmud. And yes, certain Jews have probably gone above and beyond that cap limit. But this is one of the major lies, and it's a lie huge today. As I said before, Elohim blesses the righteous in every generation wherever they are. And many times, the Jews prospered tremendously in these nations where they were sent. And trust me, that saying this was just a rousal of carnal passions to get in there and kill and take the wealth and the blessings many times of the Jews in the places they were. Russian villages expulsion, Russian countryside. So it just goes on until 1900s, and nothing in this century can compare to the Holocaust. The final straw that broke the camel's back, that brought us to the place we are, that brought the nation into being, that brought Jerusalem now into the forefront, about to be recognized as the capital, the city of Israel. So you try to figure this out and give me any other explanation than what I have just said. So I am personally actually thrilled for Judah. I'm going to support my brother, and we're going to see how this thing plays out. And I just think that this is an extreme time. This is no time to let up on truly, deeply searching the scriptures and understanding the deep, hidden, spiritual, higher level understanding of what is going on. Because if we don't have that, we are going to totally fall into the trap of Hasatan again at the end of these ages as these things wrap up. So on that note, Yahweh bless you, keep you, and preserve you. May we all get to know each other better in the kingdom to come.